There's a story buried deep in the oldest whispers of heaven, a tale so profound that even the celestial choirs hesitate to sing it. It speaks of an angel who dared to pause when God cast judgment upon Lucifer, a being of light who stepped forward when all others recoiled. He was no rebel, nor did he embrace the shadows. His heart simply yearned to salvage what was irrevocably lost. But such an act of compassion bore a devastating cost, for in the divine realm, obedience transcends mere loyalty. It is the very law of existence. And love, even the purest love, when misdirected, can be perceived as the ultimate defiance. Who was this angel, and what compelled him to act? What fate befell him for daring to challenge the divine decree? This is the saga of the angel who sought to save Lucifer, and in doing so, confronted the unfathomable wrath of God. Welcome to Bible Mysteries. If narratives like this resonate within your soul, stirring questions and igniting curiosity, then join us. Embark on a journey beyond the veil of accepted truths, where we delve into the enigmatic corners of the sacred texts. Before we continue, if you find yourself captivated by stories that make you contemplate the unseen, then take a moment to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon. Together, we shall explore the mysteries that have echoed through eternity, challenging our understanding and enriching our faith. They say the war in heaven concluded in a blaze of incandescent light so blinding that even the stars trembled in its wake. When the reverberations of rebellion finally subsided, an eerie silence descended upon heaven, not the peaceful quietude of serenity, but the stunned stillness of profound shock. Each and every angel had been forced to choose a side. Those who remained steadfast in their allegiance to the throne stood bathed in God's radiant light. Conversely, those who had followed Lucifer plunged into the abyss, consumed by a fire never intended for celestial beings. Yet amidst this stark division, there existed one who remained unmoving. He stood at the very edge of heaven's pearly gates, his gaze fixed upon the fallen as they vanished beyond the horizon of eternity. He watched, his heart aching, as the comrades he had once sung alongside were ripped from glory, their anguished cries echoing as they plummeted into the infinite darkness. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the sheer force of his heart breaking. The others, their wings folded tightly against their backs and faces hardened with divine resolve, returned to their appointed ranks. Heaven had been purged, and justice in its purest form had been served. But for this lone angel, justice felt less like a triumphant illumination and more like an unbearable loss. He turned his gaze downward towards the abyssal chasm, where the boundless brightness of heaven surrendered to the ominous smoke of divine judgment. And there, amidst the fiery depths, he believed he saw him, Lucifer, once the most radiant of all angels, now consumed by the inferno, a mere shadow of his former glory. A voice resounding with the authority of the cosmos thundered through the heavens, "It is finished." The voice of God, absolute, unwavering, and final. And yet this angel hesitated. He dared not voice his thoughts aloud, but deep within his soul a whisper began to grow louder than the silence of heaven. What if Lucifer could be saved? This single forbidden question was the genesis of everything. A thought that no angel should ever entertain compassion for the condemned. He desperately attempted to suppress it, reminding himself of the pronouncements that had been made. Lucifer had embraced pride, thereby sealing his own fate. But his heart stubbornly refused to remain silent. It felt as though a grievous wound had been inflicted upon his very spirit, He vividly recalled the beginning, when Lucifer still sang in harmony beside the throne, when light remained undivided, and when heaven bore no scars. Now that memory haunted him, a constant reminder of what had been lost. He closed his eyes, his wings trembling imperceptibly. Around him the angels sang victory hymns, their voices sounding like rivers of molten fire. Yet he found himself unable to join in their jubilation. Every word of praise felt heavy, discordant, almost sacrilegious. And as he once again peered into the abyss, something extraordinary occurred. He perceived movement. He saw one of the fallen Lucifer himself reaching weakly upward, as though struggling against the relentless pull of eternal darkness. In that instant, his heart betrayed his sacred duty. He took a single step forward. That was all it required. The celestial light that surrounded him flickered momentarily, as though heaven itself questioned his intent. The other angels, sensing his hesitation, a phenomenon so rare and so perilous, turned their attention towards him. One of them, a mighty warrior with eyes like molten gold, called out, "Brother, where do you venture?" But he remained silent, unable to articulate his motivations, for he himself did not fully comprehend them. All he knew with unwavering certainty was that he could not simply stand idly by and watch a soul, even Lucifer's, be extinguished forever. And for the first time since the dawn of creation, an angel of heaven questioned not God's authority, but the absolute finality of his judgment. He whispered under his breath, his voice barely audible, "Lord, what if mercy still holds meaning?" The heavens above him rumbled, not in anger, but in something far more profound, disappointment. He could feel it, a palpable wave of divine sorrow. Heaven itself seemed to recoil from his transgression, yet he found himself unable to halt his course. As his wings unfurled, gathering light around them like flames, he cast one final longing glance towards the throne. His eyes welled with tears, not of rebellion, but of profound sorrow. Then he descended downward towards the realm where no angel was ever meant to tread, towards the pit where heaven's light could not penetrate. He wasn't falling. He was kneeling in motion, surrendering everything to a decision that his heart could no longer reverse. He was driven by love, by mercy, and by the memory of a brother lost. The angels above watched him vanish into the abyss, none daring to follow his perilous descent. They struggled to comprehend what they had just witnessed. Was it an act of ultimate love or an act of unforgivable defiance? No one could say with certainty. But one thing remained undeniable: heaven had witnessed something unprecedented, something profoundly dangerous, something resonantly human. The radiant light of heaven faded behind him like a retreating sunrise, each flap of his wings echoing through the emptiness, each beat slower and heavier than the last, as though the enormity of his actions clung to him like ethereal chains. He had never before experienced darkness not of this kind. In heaven, even shadows were gentle, playful. They danced and shimmered with ethereal beauty. But here, the darkness was all-consuming. It did not bend or retreat. It swallowed light whole. The deeper he descended, the more deafening the silence became. No songs, no wind, no presence of the divine. Only broken, distant echoes like screams forever trapped in the void. He felt his own celestial light dimming. The radiance that marked him as a being of heaven began to flicker. It frightened him because for the first time he wasn't certain if God still watched him or if he had turned his face away in disappointment. He whispered, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and determination, Father, if I am wrong, then let my light be extinguished. But if mercy still exists, let it burn brighter than ever before." The void offered no response. He continued to fall not in rebellion, but in fervent supplication. His wings caught fleeting bursts of fading gold as he passed through layers of forgotten realms where time held no dominion and light existed only as a fading memory. Then suddenly he heard a whisper. It was not divine, but fractured like wind whistling through shattered glass. "Why have you come here?" He froze midair, his senses heightened, scanning the surrounding darkness. The air around him shifted, forming shapes, grotesque shadows that vaguely resembled angels, but were twisted, torn with wings, burned black and feathers reduced to ash. The fallen. They moved like specters, circling him cautiously, their eyes like dying embers, their faces etched with a pain older than the world itself. "Heaven has sent another," one hissed, its voice raspy with centuries of torment. "No," another sneered, its voice dripping with venom. "He no longer belongs to them." He raised his hands not in a gesture of aggression, but in a plea for peace. "I am not your enemy," he said softly, his voice resonating with sincerity. "I have come for one of you." The shadows erupted in laughter, a low, hollow, chilling sound that seemed to emanate from the very depths of despair. Then one of them, larger and darker than the rest, stepped forward. His face was almost unrecognizable beneath the layers of ruin and degradation, yet there remained something hauntingly familiar in his gaze. Lucifer. Once he had been the embodiment of light itself, now he resembled a mere memory of it, fragmented remnants of beauty, still clinging to him amidst the endless decay. His wings, though charred and broken, still held faint glimmers of the glory they once possessed. Lucifer tilted his head, studying the glowing figure before him with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. "You came down here." The angel's voice quivered slightly. "Yes." "To what end?" Lucifer inquired, his tone laced with bitterness and weariness. "To pity me?" The angel shook his head slowly, his expression conveying genuine sorrow. "To understand," Lucifer smirked, a hauntingly empty gesture that spoke volumes about his inner torment. "There is nothing left to understand. I made my choice. I chose freedom, and now I wear its chains." But the angel's eyes softened with compassion. "You call them chains, yet you defend them with every fiber of your being." Lucifer's expression darkened, a flicker of his former pride igniting within him. "You wouldn't understand." "Then help me to understand." The angel implored, his voice rising not in defiance, but in genuine ache. "Help me see what led you to turn away from the one who created us both." Lucifer stared at him for what felt like an eternity, a gaze that transcended the boundaries of time itself. Then he whispered, his voice barely audible above the howling winds of the abyss, "Because I love myself more than I loved his silence." The words struck deep, resonating within the angel's very core. He felt the weight of them, the pride, the pain, the crushing loneliness. For the first time, he saw not a rebellion, but a profound regret. Lucifer turned away, shielding his eyes from the angel's unwavering gaze. "You shouldn't be here. If he sent you, you have already failed. And if you came of your own accord," he paused, his voice cracking like thunder in a storm, "then you are no longer one of them." The angel's heart ached with a sorrow so profound that it threatened to consume him. He yearned to speak, to reassure Lucifer that his words were not true, that heaven's mercy was far greater than its wrath. But even as he opened his mouth to speak, he felt it, a sudden surge of heat, a pulse of divine energy emanating from above. Heaven had taken notice. The light that followed was not gentle. It was the light of judgment, swift and merciless. It cracked through the void, cleaving the darkness with divine fury. The fallen screamed and scattered like shadows before the dawn, desperate to escape the encroaching wrath. Lucifer shielded his face. Even he looked afraid of the impending judgment. The angel fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the raw power that surged through the air. And then he heard a voice, not the thunderous roar of rage, but something far more devastating: disappointment. You would reach out to one whom I have condemned. The angel lowered his head, tears streaming down his face, leaving trails of shimmering light in their wake. I only sought to show mercy, he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. Mercy, the voice echoed, reverberating through the abyss. Mercy without obedience is not love. It is rebellion, cloaked in kindness. The skies above trembled. Lucifer turned away, unable to bear witness to what was about to unfold. The angel lifted his tear-filled eyes, his gaze unwavering. Then let my mercy be my punishment. And as he uttered those words, the light engulfed him, not to destroy him utterly, but to strip away his celestial privileges. His wings dimmed their once pristine white feathers, turning a somber gray. His armor cracked and shattered, losing its radiant sheen. He was not cast out like Lucifer, condemned to eternal damnation, but he was not permitted to rise again either. He was left in the space between neither fallen nor free, a solitary watcher suspended between heaven and hell, forgotten by most, burdened by the weight of both mercy and mistake. For ages his name was never spoken, banished from the celestial choirs, until one day, long after, a prophet in exile received a vision of a luminous figure standing between the realms of the living and the dead, and inquired, "Who are you?" And the figure replied softly, "I am Jerham, the mercy of God." Time. If time even existed in the desolate realm where he was confined, flowed differently now. There was no dawn, no dusk, only a perpetual twilight, a horizon that remained eternally unchanged, suspended between light and shadow. That was where he awoke, his once golden armor now dulled to a muted bronze, his wings neither white nor black, but a haunting blend of both, like light struggling to remember itself. And around him silence reigned. He was not in heaven, nor was he in hell. He existed somewhere in between, in a liminal space that defied definition. When he attempted to rise, his knees buckled beneath him. He reached instinctively for his sword, but it was gone, stripped from him as a symbol of his lost status. All that remained was a faint indentation on his hip where it had once rested. He whispered softly, his voice barely audible, "Is this death?" But no answer came. The air felt heavy, as though it carried the weight of every unspoken sorrow in creation. He looked up, expecting to see the radiant light of the throne, but above him was only a dim golden haze, too bright to be considered darkness, yet too dark to be considered holy. He was utterly alone, yet not entirely forgotten, for in the stillness, a presence began to stir. From the swirling mist, shapes began to coalesce, faint, glowing silhouettes of souls. They drifted towards him like lost stars, their ethereal voices whispering prayers, regrets and cries, too ancient for words. Some looked terrified, others appeared peaceful, but all bore the unmistakable mark of being lost. The angel felt their sorrow, and it pierced him deeper than any physical blade ever could. He finally understood why he had been left in this desolate place. This was not a punishment. It was a sacred purpose. For the first time since his fall, he heard the faint echo of that divine voice again, not filled with anger this time, nor distant and cold. You yearn for mercy. Now bear witness to it. He turned, and before him unfolded the boundary between worlds, a thin shimmering river of gold that divided the living from the dead. Souls stood upon its banks trembling and uncertain about which path to take. He could see the radiant light of heaven on one side and the faint, aching shadows of damnation on the other. In that moment, he knew that his calling wasn't to erase his past mistakes, but to redeem them. He would guide these lost souls, helping them find peace, even if he could never find it for himself. He knelt at the river's edge, in the same pose of reverence he had once adopted before God, and whispered, "Then let this be my eternal service." A warm wind moved through the air, almost like a sigh emanating from heaven itself. From that day forward, whenever a soul departed from the world of the living, they would see a figure waiting for them at the border of eternity. He wasn't as radiant as the other angels, nor as terrifying as the fallen, but he was gentle, his eyes filled with sorrow, his wings touched by the colors of twilight. He never introduced himself, nor did he ever speak of his past transgressions, but those who saw him felt a profound sense of peace in his presence, a strange quiet comfort in his silent vigil. Some would later speak his name with reverence, while others would whisper it in fear, Jerham the angel, who watches over the souls of the dead, the one who weeps for what heaven has lost and what hell has become. Even now they say that when a righteous soul passes from the earth, a soft, comforting voice greets them at the veil, "Do not fear, you are seen, you are loved, you are forgiven." That voice belongs to him, the angel who once questioned divine judgment, now the angel who carries the banner of mercy through the gates of eternity. He is neither a rebel nor a hero, but something far rarer, a reminder that even in heaven, love comes at a great cost. The river flowed quietly that day, its surface shimmering like liquid gold. The souls moved slowly, drifting through the mist like leaves carried by a gentle breeze. Jerham knelt beside the water, tracing faint ripples with his fingertips. Each ripple carried a prayer, a memory, a heartbeat that had once belonged to the living. He had grown accustomed to the quiet solitude. The ache of loneliness had become almost sacred until the moment when the air began to shift. A sound pierced through the stillness, the sound of wings not like those of the departed souls. These were powerful wings, radiant, pulsating with the very fire of heaven. He didn't turn right away. He already knew who it was. The light grew stronger, reflecting against the golden surface of the river, until a figure stepped through it, tall, armored, his very presence shaking the air itself. Jerham rose slowly from the riverbank, the twilight light casting long shadows across his dimmed wings. The air trembled, not with darkness this time, but with a familiar, commanding radiance. A blade of pure light cleaved the mist, and through it stepped Michael, the archangel, armored in brilliance, his wings unfurled like burning suns. Jerham did not turn away, nor kneel. He simply stood in the stillness, the whispers of wandering souls swirling gently around his feet. Michael's gaze swept over him not with anger, but with a grief so profound it silenced even the wind. Jerham, he spoke, voice carved from thunder and lament, all of heaven weeps for what you have become. The words struck deep, Yet Jerham's expression remained calm, steady, as the river of eternity behind him. "Then let heaven weep," he answered softly. "If love is only obedience and mercy forbidden, what meaning does glory hold?" Michael closed his eyes, pain rippling through his divine frame. "You traded eternity for a single soul." Jerham's voice did not waver. "And then, that is a price worth paying. For even the condemned deserved one final hand reaching toward them in the dark." Silence fell heavy, sacred, irreversible, and heaven itself held its breath. So as we reflect on the tale of Jerham the Angel of Mercy, we see a powerful reminder that even in the face of seemingly absolute judgment, compassion and love hold an undeniable value. It's a story that challenges us to look beyond the surface, to question and to consider the potential for redemption in even the most desperate situations. Perhaps it isn't about questioning authority, but about expanding our understanding of love itself. What are your thoughts on Jerham's choice? Does his story resonate with you? We'd love to hear your perspective. Leave a comment below. Share your insights. Ask a question, or just join the discussion. Let's explore these mysteries together. And if you found this journey thought-provoking, make sure to subscribe. We'll continue to delve into the enigmatic corners of biblical narratives, uncovering hidden meanings and challenging our perspectives. Don't miss out on future explorations. Hit that subscribe button and let's continue this journey of discovery together.